Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in again. This is the BowRush podcast. I'm Scott Nelson with co-host Travis Stowe. How you doing, Travis?
I'm doing pretty good. How about you, Scott?
Oh man, I'm doing great. I'm excited to get this podcast started. This is podcast 002 for everyone who's following along or wants to go back and listen again and get caught up. Check out our intro, which is 001. And this is our first actual one. We're going to bring on a guest, talk a little bit about a big thing that I've been trying to do research into, and I know you have, but not everyone can always get that perfect private land to go hunt. So we're relegated to going and finding public land, and there's lots of it, no matter where you're at, whether you're out west or you're in the south or up northeast. There's always accessible public land. And what's your feelings on it? How are you going to approach this season with public land?
Well, usually I've had the opportunity to actually hunt on private land, but this season we're going to be going off on opening season to public land on a WMA. Hopefully you'll be coming with me. In fact, that's coming up in 2 days from now?
Oh, it's coming up quick. Just trying to get some loose ends tied up so I can make sure I can get out there with you, bud.
Very cool. Yeah, I'm pretty excited. I mean, I normally like being closer, but the WMAs happen to be a lot further drive. Not too much. Most people are probably used to giving a good drive. I've been fortunate enough to have a 15, 20, 30-minute drive at most to a hunting property. Now it's going to be about an hour and a half. Having means we have to wake up earlier, drive longer, but it's still going to be pretty exciting.
Hey, any hunt's worth a drive, man. I know that.
Oh, yes, definitely.
Well, public land, when we're talking about there's so much of it, there's different regulations wherever you're at, and it's vastly different going between out west and, down south where we're at right now. So, we want to split this into a two-part podcast. The second part, which is going to come up in a little bit, is going to be based on the South, talking about Alabama, Georgia, Tennessee, that region. But we got a guest on today that we're very fortunate enough to have come on and talk with us. His name's Evan Williams. He's pretty well known out in Colorado. He worked in a bow shop for a while, but he knows the regulations pretty much in and out. He knows the regions out there, when you're talking about Wyoming, Idaho, Colorado, Utah. So he's very familiar with the public land out there and how to kind of approach it. So we're really excited to bring him on here in a little bit.
I just want to be, or at least let you know ahead of time, when we spoke with him, there was a few audio glitches happening through the conversations. The audio is great. He has a great load of knowledge to share, but just when you do hear it, understand that it was something that we couldn't control. So just be prepared.
Hey, so Evan, we're really glad to have you on today. Thank you very much for taking some time out of your busy day. I know you have a pretty good commute every day, so thank you for coming on. Can you start out and tell us a little bit about yourself and tell our listeners who you are and kind of your background?
Well, my biggest background as far as the outdoor industry is concerned, I grew up in Western Kansas. And a lot of people think Kansas, and they think the whitetail side of things. And where we were at, mule deer was just a much more prevalent species. And that's where I gained my passion for mule deer in general. And as I was growing up, we got real heavy into the competitive rifle side of everything. And not the long distance stuff. I was actually what you would call an IR shooter, which is international rifle. So I spent all of high school, had a full athletic scholarship to the University of Missouri in Kansas City, shooting my rifles and trying to qualify for not only the U.S. national team, but the goal was to get on the U.S. Olympic team. So I trained through 3 quads, which is a 12-year cycle total, and just never produced or never popped the scores I needed. And in 2007, right before the Beijing Olympic tryouts, I was in Mississippi. I was working for a pro shop down there part-time and had the opportunity to leave the university where I was working on a master's degree and move out to Colorado to train here at the U.S. Olympic Training Center station in the Springs. Well, to be able to do that, I had to find a supplemental income. And with my background in the outdoor industry already, working in the shop down there, and growing up in Kansas, I had got my Eagle Scout my senior year in high school, and always had a love for backpacking, and being able to combine the two was just something that was always on my mind. And knew the reputation of the shop here in the Springs, so I came out and did an interview with them, and the owner's wife just fell in love with me because of my background and what I grew up doing and where I grew up. And when her husband Bill came back down the mountain, because it was in September, he brought me into the shop, looked at me, handed me a bow, said, "Go ahead and set this up for me real quick, and we can get started." Set it up, handed it to him. He looked it over, said, "You're hired as far as I'm concerned." And that was in October of 2008, after I did not qualify for the Olympic team.
Oh, wow.
So, and from there, just, build a reputation as someone that, I believe had the best interest of not only my customers, but really, I view most of my customers, even to this day, as very close friends. And I think that kind of really helped my foundation in the industry. That's kind of how I got into it.
No, that's awesome. So right now, where are you at? I mean, you're still down at Bill Pellegrino's, or where are you at right now?
I actually took a new job about 2.5 weeks ago now. It's still in Colorado. I'm commuting up to Denver at the moment, and I am working for Kifaru International. We're a made-to-order pack and shelter company. So most of our stuff is high-end. Most of our packs with a compartment system. So we do like an add-on type system. So you can start with your basic lightweight or hauling freighter type external frame, kind of pick and choose what bag you want, and then add your little accessories to gain some additional space and kind of rig it the way you want. Most of our stuff, just basic, is going to start around $800. And then we use sil nylon for a lot of our floorless shelters, both for the single and two-person team, all the way up to a 24-man teepee.
Oh, wow.
That's pretty cool.
So
that's huge. Well, to dive a little bit into what we're doing this podcast on is so many hunters, they're out there trying to draw those limited archery tags, and you rarely draw them. I mean, you'll get them, but the most of the people out there are looking to hunt on public land. So
right. Sorry, my daughter.
No, oh, you're good. I think I'm the only one here without kids running around in the background.
Yeah, I have my almost 1-year-old son trying to fall asleep.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, mine's 2.5, and she just came in from playing in the rain with mom.
Well, talking about hunting on public land, I mean, what's one thing that you saw with hunters in Colorado? I mean, what was the process between, finding a public land and really narrowing down to where they want to hunt on that? I mean, it's large areas. How would you go about splitting public land into huntable areas?
My biggest approach is, with a passion more for mule deer than for elk, I really kind of focus on areas that in the last 3 to 5 years have produced either a little bit higher success rates, because they do success rates for each and every unit. So how many guys say that they hunted that in the survey? How many tagged, and are they tagging bucks, or are they tagging does? And then be a Pope and Young subscriber or member, I can go back and kind of look at some of those counties and look at the size of animals that were entered in the books, and kind of make a judgment as to where I want to hunt mule deer at.
Before you go any further, when you're saying unit, because we're thinking as well, someone coming in maybe the first time wanting to hunt public land out there, When you're talking about unit, what exactly are you meaning?
So a lot of things that most Western hunters are not, or sorry, most Eastern hunters aren't used to. Western states don't have the abundance of wildlife or huntable wildlife that a lot of Eastern states do. We don't get 4 to 8 deer tags like I know Alabama and Georgia and some of those southern states get. You get one deer in this state, and that's it.
Ouch.
Now we can get 1 deer, 1 antelope. You can get 1 what they call list A tag, so 1 primary elk tag, and then depending on where you're at, you can get a second one. But the entire state is broken up into different units based on geographic location and boundaries. Some of those are river boundaries. Some of them are mountain ridge lines, and you just have to know which ridge line is the boundary and maybe have a little gray area. Is it the apex of it? And so definitely having a GPS system is key out west. But when you're hunting certain units, if you have a unit restricted tag, like my elk tag this year is what we call a limited entry elk tag. So I put in for so many years, and every year I don't draw, I gain a point. And that gets me an extra year's worth of drawing or an extra name in the hat. Once I get enough and I draw that tag, I am restricted. I can only hunt that one unit and nowhere else in the state. Deer in the entire state of Colorado is a draw. So I have to specify what unit, or a lot of times it's a cluster. So, a popular unit out here is the Sangre de Cristo mountain range. Well, it's mainly 2 units, but if you put in for the primary unit of the Sangre de Cristo range, you're actually getting 5 units on that tag. So you get a much bigger area to hunt, which means you have more to scout. You have more that you have to try and narrow down and figure out where you want to go. But it produces very good bucks. But it is some of the roughest terrain in the state, very vertical and very hard to hunt. So that's kind of how the units work.
When it comes to actually purchasing or picking a unit, is there some sort of guide or stats that you get about like what's in the area so you know what you're picking for?
To some extent.
Or is it just more of you just need to know the people that might know or contact scouts that do this on the everyday base? Or is it something where you spend the summertime and you have access to go and look and choose before you have to say, that's the one I want?
No, you actually don't get to know ahead of time.
Oh my gosh.
Statistics typically come out in, I believe, February. You can subscribe to, I think it's Colorado Outdoors. Is the magazine. It's basically our division's bi-monthly magazine, I think. And the January-February issue is the previous year's statistics. So it's how many tags are issued in each unit, how many points it took to draw, if there was any leftover tags for that unit, and basically all the statistics that you really need and more for trying to narrow down. Our seasons don't start. It's the last weekend of August is when our seasons start. Your applications for your draw deadlines is typically the first Saturday in April. So you have to know all the way back before turkey season starts where you want to try and go for your fall tags.
So, I guess that lends to a little bit more of a point as far as hunting public lands out there is your prep time. You have a lot of time once you apply for your tag to the time that you're actually going to go and try and fill that tag. There's 4 months, possibly 5 in between that. So what do you suggest for our listeners? And during that 5 months, how would you best start approaching hunting a public land? Is it looking at Google Earth? Is it talking to the DNR? Is it physically getting out there and walking the property? Like, how should they approach that?
Trying to take the 4 days off plus flight or drive time to come out here and scout and get back and losing that valuable vacation time. probably isn't going to be a big option for a lot of guys. And I know exactly where you're coming from. I've lived out here almost 7 years now, and I truly have only got 3 days of in the field preseason boots on ground scouting. My work was such at the shop that I was working 6 days a week. And during the summer, our busy time, I was working anywhere up to 70 hours a week trying to get everybody ready. So, Google Earth is a very, very good scouting tool. It's one of my primary ones. Another one that I use is once I kind of have an idea or I narrow down, let's say 5 or 6 different spots, I can look at the division areas. So each one is going to be under like a ranger district or a certain division office is kind of the headquarters for that area. Or you also have your BLM offices, which is your Bureau of Land Management, which is basically tied into U.S. Forest Service. All of those are going to be great resources that you can call and talk to either their staff wildlife biologist or figure out who the wildlife biologist in the area is. And a lot of times they'll give me their cell phone number because it's a work cell. And I've actually been in a unit last year. I had my 6 main areas, so I basically had a plan A through a plan F. And when all 6 of those plans failed, I called the division office and I said, "Hey, who's your wildlife biologist? And is there any way I can contact him?" Well, he was actually out on the mountain. Called him, left him a message. 3 hours later, he had service and called me back, and we came up with basically a plan 7, 8, 9 or something like that. And I ended up tagging a Pope and Young, not one of my best bucks, but probably one of my proudest bucks. And that
was the Hail Mary hunt.
Oh, it was. It was day 13. I hadn't seen a shooter buck. Everything I was seeing was forkies, and I'd rather eat a tag than shoot an immature animal because you never know what the potential might be. So, yeah, it was a Hail Mary. I had come back into camp that night with the sole intention of packing camp and just hiking out that night. Came over the ridge, and I looked 400 yards on the ridge across from camp, and he's there with 2 other bucks and 5 does on the chute straight out to the east of my camp, feeding in the sun.
Wow.
Popped up a spotter right there on the ridge above my tent and watched him till dark. Went in, slept, got up at 5 o'clock the next morning, had my breakfast. There's a rock right next to my tent. Put my spotting scope up and sat down on that rock 3 feet from my tent. Found him, and 6 hours later he was on the ground.
That's phenomenal. That's one thing compared to out east, down south. My experience, anyways, out in Colorado has been the DWR, the DNR, the Department of Natural Resources. The guys out there, that's their legitimate full-time job. I mean, all of them have degrees in biology or in some kind of wildlife science, and they're willing to sit there and talk to you on the phone and help you figure out through things. I mean, I spent almost 3.5 hours on the phone with a guy one time just trying to figure out really how to apply for tags, where I should hunt, and they're happy to do it, which is a little bit different than what I've experienced down here in the South. You can't really lean on those guys for how to hunt just because of how many guys you have.
And there's so much private that they've got their own little spot that they want to kind of keep to themselves. And yeah, they're the number that we like to throw out a lot of when I get a lot of guys asking about, how many people you're trying to deal with is west of the Mississippi. There are less hunters in the entire area west of the Mississippi than there is in just the state of Pennsylvania by themselves.
Oh my gosh.
Okay. Every year, Colorado, I believe the last number I saw was 28,000 and change. So under 29,000 total archers, just in the state of Colorado, and somewhere around, I think 84,000 firearms hunters. So rifle and muzzleloader. Mm-hmm. So you've got 13.7 million acres of public ground access in the state of Colorado. Most of that is in over-the-counter units, so a unit that anybody from anywhere, even out of the country, can come in, buy an over-the-counter tag, find some national forest, find some BLM or U.S. Forest Service ground, and they can go hunt.
Wow.
Let's say someone does happen to come in out of state and they might not necessarily know all the rules and regulations in that particular area. So that they happen to get a tag, they go out hunting, let's say, for instance, they walk onto the area that they're supposed to be in, but then they somehow cross over their spots. What should they be prepared for? Because let's say they just happen to walk over. I mean, is there something they need to worry about? Is there something that they need to, like, this is going to be penalized if they get caught? How do they know that they're over it? I mean, what happens?
The best system for hunting out west is get you a touchscreen color GPS unit and look into the OnX GPS system. They do them for, I believe, almost every single Western state. And it's what I grew up calling a plat map. So it's the entire state in your GPS that breaks down the boundaries of every unit and what type of land it is. Is it private? If it is, who owns it? Is it U.S. Forest Service? Is it BLM? Is it a state trust? And depending on how accurate your GPS will zoom into, like my personal unit will only zoom into 20 feet, but it will tell me within 20 feet if I'm in my unit and if I'm on public ground or private. Because the fines and the trespassing and all that, there is no leniency. If you cross over on a private ground and you're a hunter in Colorado, a lot of them are people who have come in from other states to get away from the big city life or whatever it is, or they want their own little chunk of whatever to hunt. And a lot of them aren't nice about it. Colorado is the only state that I have knocked on a door to hunt and had dogs sicked on me.
So does that happen to be, let's say you get the bull, and though it runs out of your unit into another unit, do you need to do preparation, like call ahead to the DNR or let him know that you're having to now go track the animal, or what happens there?
It is, because it's a much different game regulation. While your tag is funding the state of Colorado, the animals do not belong to the state. They view them as belonging to whoever's ground they're on. So unfortunately, like I grew up in Kansas. If I shoot an animal on public or private ground that I have permission to be on and it crosses boundary lines, I can start by calling the other landowner. I've got permission to hunt your neighbor so-and-so's, or I was on this piece of public ground, and I shot an animal and it crossed over. Do I have permission to follow? If they deny me access to their ground to recover an animal, I can then contact my division officer, and he can actually come out. I can verify that I shot him legally where I was supposed to be at, and he can take me and trail that animal with me to recover it, and that landowner cannot do anything. That's what I grew up with in Kansas. Colorado is not the same way. If I shoot an animal on public ground and it crosses onto a private boundary, which in Colorado does not have to be marked, they don't have to put up signs and they do not have to put up fences. You could just be walking through dark timber and all of a sudden you're on private ground. So you have to be very careful. But if I shoot an animal on ground I legally have permission and right to be on and it crosses a boundary, I don't have permission to chase it. I can go through the same steps. I can do everything in my power to contact that ranch, either the owner or the manager or whoever owns that property. And if they deny me access, I can go to division, but they're going to tell you there's nothing I can do. Very, very often, I actually only had one customer. He was actually hunting in Eastern Colorado on the plains, shot an animal on ground that he was leasing, and it crossed onto one of his neighbors. They denied him access. He went to the division. They could not do anything about it. So he actually contacted his lawyer, had his lawyer contact the other landowner, and then the other landowner backed off once he got his lawyer involved, and he was able to recover his animal.
Power is money.
Yeah.
And that's right. And the fact that he had to take it that far, to me, I view that as, if that landowner refuses access, that's fine. It's your property. I understand that. But that division officer better be issuing them a wanton waste fine, because they are now basically letting an animal die for no reason. Where I'm going to take that animal, I'm going to put it in my freezer, and I'm going to feed my family on it. They're not going to do a thing with it. They're going to let the bears and the coyotes come in on it. And that was a wasted life when I was completely in the right. Maybe I made a bad shot. Maybe it deflected. Maybe I hit a front shoulder, and at the angle I was at, it angled back and hit guts, and it wasn't a fatal shot right there. It runs far enough, crosses boundary lines, that arrow angles and does more damage. Now it's done. Or maybe it's sitting there still alive, and animals are eating on it while it's still alive because it can't go anywhere. It's so wounded. So that's my personal take on it. So, yeah, I don't like Colorado retrieval laws. I think it protects the landowner too much. But I understand kind of why they do it. I just wish they would do some extra enforcement if a landowner is going to be that way towards a hunter.
So I guess in each state, depending on where they live, they might want to find that out beforehand.
I would definitely recommend that. And if there's any question on, am I going to be too close to a boundary? What if an animal runs? Play it safe. Look at where private lands are at, because there's plenty of places out there where you can find that. You can find it on huntdata.com for Colorado. You can find it on the OnX systems stuff. Your National Geographic fold-out maps, it has different colors for public versus private and wilderness versus not. Find you a good chunk of wilderness, get in the middle of it. That way if it runs a mile or 2 miles, it's still running on public ground.
That's good advice.
Do whatever you can to protect yourself. CYA all the way. The most important thing is to get your regs where you're going to go. Read the new rules and regulations pages. Most of it won't apply in the season you're going to want, but you need to at least go through that. And then just some random, go through archery rules and regulations, because there are some specific ones to each method of take or method of harvest. The biggest one that a lot of people, especially coming to Colorado, don't understand or don't even look at, we're a no electronic state. None, zip, zero, period. You can have no electronic sights, no electronics on your nocks. You cannot have any type of electronic video equipment attached to your bow or the arrow.
That is really good to know.
That was one of the biggest things when, where we were located. It was a great place for out-of-staters to come in, do a final checkup, come into us, kind of look at the shop, maybe shoot a little bit just to check their bow with altitude. And then, they can head up into the mountains. Mainly your central and southern guys are doing that. And that is the one thing this time of year that I had to let guys know the most, was they'd show up with mounts for their GoPros, or they show up with lighted nocks. And I'm like, did you guys read the regs? That's not legal in this state. And it blows their minds.
Oh, yeah.
So, and Eastman's did a big thing on it a couple of years ago. I believe there's 4 states in the country that don't allow electronics, period. None. There's another 8 that we allow this, but we don't allow that. Mm-hmm. So make sure you check out the regs. Especially with some of the new technologies and broadheads coming out. That new, well, I guess it's not new. I guess it's
the biohazard.
I think it's called the Toxic.
Yep.
From Flying Arrow.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And I know Chris Rager. I know him very well. I was able to personally meet him last year at the Matthews show. But we've talked a little bit and done some correspondence between that. But it was the first time we got to sit down and talk about his product. I had a year of experience with it. My brother was using them back in Kansas where they are legal. And so we just got to sit down and have a beer and kind of share some things and go over some things. That broadhead is not legal in the state of Colorado. And I know guys that are still using them here, and I know shops that are still selling them here, and they will not tell you it's legal. They will sell you the broadhead, and it's on you to know that you just bought a product that wasn't legal in our state. The exact reg reads, a broadhead must have a cutting surface in the same plane from the start of the point to the end of the blade. So there can be no curvature at all to that blade design, and that's where they get you on it.
Wow.
Sneaky bastards.
Yep. So, and they're not trying to trick you, but I mean, it's one of those things that's spelled out to my mind with a degree in mathematics. I know the difference between a Cartesian coordinate graph that's two-dimensional, which would be a legal straight blade, and a three-dimensional Cartesian coordinate that is a third curvature and is illegal. And I bet I've had hour-long conversations on the phone at the shop with guys trying to figure that rule and regulation out, and what's legal and what's not, what can I do and what can't I do.
That's crazy. Yeah, I mean, the difference in regulations between out west and out east or down south, when even if you take out the fact that we can kill 10 does and 2 bucks in a season, plus plus quota hunts on the WMAs, taking that huge difference out, just the method and the regulations behind the actual hunt is insane. The dates, when you can and can't hunt. Out here, you're a bow hunter. You hunt from September 12th through January 31st in part of the state, and you all the way through.
And if you're hunting the Eastern Plains, your season starts October 1st, and there's a break for the muzzleloader season, and then you open back up, and there's a break for the first rifle, and then you have another break for second rifle, and then you get to finish your season out. And you are not allowed to hunt during a firearms season if you have archery equipment, if you have an archery tag. And there's states I believe it's Idaho, and I know for sure Oregon. I don't know if they changed it or not. Alaska might be a third. They do not allow an expandable broadhead.
Really?
So you have to have a fixed blade.
You have to shoot a fixed blade. And there's some broadheads, like I am an absolute fan of the Ramcat broadhead out of Pennsylvania. Brett Fulton has designed, in my opinion, one of the ultimate 3-blade fixed blade broadheads on the market. There's some other stuff I'd like to try, but it's just that it's something I am going to try. I have my fail safe, and that Ramcat is it.
One thing is setting some realistic expectations. A lot of guys are going out and they're just dead set on killing that trophy, but really they're hunting.
If you're coming to Colorado, you're hunting the wrong state. I'll tell you that right now. Colorado manages its elk herd for quantities, not the quality. On an archery tag, there's 10 or 15 units, and I don't remember the number off the top of my head, that are a draw unit. Everything else in the state is over the counter. You can find some very, very good bulls on over-the-counter public ground tags. I've got 3 buddies in Denver, 2 I work with, and 1 works for one of our distributors. They're hunting an over-the-counter unit that I know exactly where they're at. And one of them has a 5x6 bull elk right now in a basin that he can access whenever he wants. And that bull is a legitimate 330, 340 class bull on public ground in an over-the-counter unit. There's no way to get to him where he's at. He's above tree line. The wind is always blowing in a direction. If you come over the top, he's going to bust you. If you come up from the bottom, he's going to see you. So, those animals that get that big on public ground, on over-the-counter areas, are big for a reason. So.
Well, very cool.
Do you guys both have all your tags and stuff ready to go for down there?
Oh, yeah. Well, I do. I don't know about...
I don't, as of right now, unless I see, this is my dilemma. Do I keep my residency in Colorado and apply for my tags? Or because if not, it's going to cost me like $400 to hunt this season.
Ooh.
It's gonna cost that much to hunt in Georgia.
Yeah, because
out of state
it's
to buck. I didn't
yeah, because it's like
they're not pretty.
$100. It's $100 for the hunting license, $195 for the big game license, $78 for the WMA. Yeah, yeah.
It's worth it.
Well, but
No, well, I mean, what I'm probably doing is changing my residency and then just sucking it up. Because the thing is, when I do my here's a question for you. So how does that affect it? If can I put in for draw for out of state?
Oh yeah,
in Colorado.
Yeah, and that's one thing I wanted to add is even if you do not plan on coming to hunt, you're going to give up like $604, and they're going to keep it for, I think, 2.5 months, essentially, by the time you get your check back. It is worth it to buy that point for every species that you want to hunt eventually. If you had a tag the previous year, you're going to get all of that money back except for $3. If you didn't have a tag and you put in for a point, you're going to get everything back except for $40. So essentially a point for every species is going to cost you $40. Well, if you do a point for elk and a point for mule deer, you're $80 if you didn't have a tag the year before. But you start accumulating those points before you know it, you're sitting on 3, 4, possibly 5 points. You got your pick of just about whatever you want for mule deer on 3 or 4 points for archery. And elk, you're right at some of those units. If we don't go to a point banking system, which don't even get me on that one, that you stand a very good chance of drawing.
So I mean, the banking, like the point values, right, is that something you cash in? Or
yes.
So once you hit a certain limit, basically that allows you to not have to pay for that year, or is it just means it gives you that chance to get that tag?
It gives you the chance to get that tag. So for instance, the tag I have this year is what we call an LE tag, or a limited entry tag. So they go, okay, for this unit, we let 115 resident tags out. I think we're at like a 20% state. So that means there's 25 odd non-resident tags. Plus there's another, I think 10 or 15 landowner vouchers where the landowners pay a non-resident fee to get their tags, and they can turn around and sell them to whoever they want for whatever price they want.
For $2,000 minimum.
Keep going for mine. Yeah.
Oh,
I knew of 7 landowner vouchers, and they went for $2,200 in a total of 3 days. So, and some out-of-staters that have money, especially some of the Texas guys, are willing to pay it without blinking an eye. But of your limited entry units, it'll take X number of points to guarantee that you're going to get in there. Like the unit I've got, 4 points this year guaranteed that you do that tag. 3 points gave you, I think it was an 84 or 86% chance of everybody who applied with at least 3 points. 22 people did not draw that tag. So 22 people next year will have 4 points. And you can actually go back and you can look at how many people with 2 points applied, how many people with 1 point applied, how many people with no points. And you can kind of start factoring based on residency, who's going to be getting tags, and where the point creep is going to come, where 3 points won't get you that tag anymore. 5 points will guarantee you that tag. 4 points will be a bubble.
Well, it's complete luck of the draw. Like my buddy Tyler, he's out hunting moose right now. He's 19 years old. His dad has been putting in for this tag for 9 or 10 years and hasn't drawn. This is his first year to put in, and he drew the tag.
And moose. But here's the thing: antelope, elk, and mule deer, and bear. I think bear are a completely different system.
Really?
They are true points. If a guy puts in for my unit with 17 points, he gets the tag. There's no questions. They start with the highest point guy, and they work their way down. When you get into, okay, we've taken care of everybody down to 4 points. We have 70 tags left, and we have 92 guys left with 3 points. 92 guys get their name in a hat. They pull out the 70 names. Those 70 guys have tags. The other 22 don't. And nobody below them gets them. They gain a point. Mountain
Nice.
goat, bighorn, and moose don't work that way. You put in your points. After 3 years, you're finally eligible to actually be in the draw. The first 3 years, all you're doing is gaining points, and you're not eligible. You cannot draw in those 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
That is your basically your bank. So once you have those 3 points, your name is in the hat once. Every year after that you don't draw. So I go in with 3. I'm in 3 and 0. So I have my 3 base points, but no extras. My name is in the hat once. When I don't draw, I gain 1 extra point. So now I am 3 for my base plus 1. So the next year when I put in, I get my 1 point for my base and 1 extra for the year I didn't draw. So now I get 2 names in the hat. When I don't draw, I'm now 3 and 2. And it just keeps progressing. I get 1 name in the draw for my 3 base, and every other point I have on top of that gets me another name. And it's some weird, funky system. They put your ID number into some algorithm, and it comes all the way over to something else, and it flips and spins and does something to your number, and it comes back down to somebody else, and it flips and spins and rolls it and does something else to your number, and then it goes into your bank. And they somehow select X number of however many tags, and then they have to unjumble all that and figure out who your tag holders are.
Seriously?
So just because you're 3 and 12 doesn't mean you're going to gain that tag. I could draw that 3 and 1 because my lucky number got pulled because I've got a golden horseshoe somewhere.
So, in a little bit of a wrap up, people that are going to come out west and they're going to try and go hunt. They don't have the money to go out there and buy that big high dollar, ranch for wildlife tag or ranching tag. They want to come out there and hunt on public land. Do you recommend they go to like huntinggpsmaps.com or huntdata.com, something like that to start their research, or what?
Those are definitely great map sites to start. There's also a lot of other Western tools. The internet is a great one. One of the websites I like to use, and I like to promote it because I'm one of the field editors for them, is rockslide.com. And that's rock without a C. Another good one is you've got bowsite.com is okay. You've got graylightproductions.com. They've got another good forum. Don't be afraid to hop on one of those internet sites and just interested in going to Colorado, interested in going to Idaho or Montana, wherever it's going to be. Does anybody have an idea where to start? Not looking for honey holes. A lot of those guys are going to tell you, this general area is really good. This general area is really good. I personally kind of like to focus on wilderness areas because it is restricted to foot and horse traffic only in the state of Colorado. Don't be afraid to make a lot of phone calls. Your division officers, your wildlife biologists, don't not utilize a taxidermy shop that is possibly in an area you are considering. I hunted an area in 2012. I had never been in there before, never got to go in there. Everybody told me it was a good tag, so I put in for it. I drew it. When I talked to them, I've just heard good things. I don't know anything about it. Okay, I'm starting from nothing. I started calling the taxidermists in that unit in possible areas I wanted to be in and kind of figuring out, where some animals were at that they've heard of getting shot that were brought into them. So taxidermists know more than a lot of guys give them credit for, because a lot of guys are going to tell them exactly where they shot it. So my taxidermist I was at last Thursday, picking a mount out for my antelope I just killed, and walk into his freezer, and there's a 192-inch typical mule deer laying on the freezer floor right next to my antelope. Knew everything about it. He told me the unit. He told me within 2 miles of which basin he was in. Perfect. That hunter had a big mouth. So take advantage of it. If I ever get those tags, I can go back and reference those.
Oh, wow.
So keep notes on on everything. Where you're looking, what you're hearing. If you go into an area, take notes. If you're in there for 3 days and you're not seeing anything, but you're seeing late sign, you might be in either an early season calving area and they've already left, or you're in a transition area that they're coming from the high country and calving areas down to those wintering grounds, and you're just not catching things right. So, keep journals and always go back to your notes. Find an area that holds animals that you can hunt consistently and get to know. The odds of harvesting an elk with archery equipment on an over-the-counter tag in Colorado is about 11%.
Wow.
I know guys that break that mold every year. I know a gentleman, he called a good bull in for his wife on Saturday and never presented her a shot. It's the 9th year they've hunted that unit. The first year he hunted, he did not fill his tag. The second year, he shot a cow. And the next 7 years, he shot a legal 5-point bull.
Wow.
So hunt an area as much and as often as you can. Get to know it. Keep that journal. You're going to figure out a pattern. You're going to figure out where animals are on dry years, where they're at on wet years, where they're traveling, where they like to frequent, and if they get pressure, where they go. Especially on a public over-the-counter tag, that is the biggest key. I found a little pocket in 2010. We had spotted this 350-ish bull, and he only had like 7 cows with him. And we were in an area that it was real shooty. So it was a north-south ridge, and both sides of this ridge just had all kinds of little finger drainages. And from the bottom, you could find these nice open benches at like 10,000 feet maybe. And you could just sit here and you could glass this front for miles and see all these chutes. And we found this bull with his cows in one chute. And we saw him 2 days straight, 2 mornings, 2 evenings in the exact same spot. Got a game plan together. We climbed 2,000 vertical feet in elevation to get a campsite above him. He came out that 3rd morning, and as soon as we saw him, I grabbed my bow, my pack, and I started running down the ridge towards him. What I didn't know is there was another group of guys coming up from the bottom, and when the thermals shifted, their wind blew right up to him, and he disappeared. A week later, I went back into that same area. No animals anywhere in the 3 miles we could see. But there was a pocket we couldn't see, and that's the direction I headed. There was no trail that went in there for 2 miles. And I just bushwhacked into there. I found that bull and another one I nicknamed Saber. He was a 48-inch dagger that came up and over his head sideways and a big 6 on the other side. And they were in a pocket that if you were going to get in there, you had to want to be in there. It was rocky and nasty, but it had a nice flat bench and meadow in the middle of it with dark timber and a little basin all 3 sides and opened to the east.
That's really
And
cool.
when they got pressure, they went up and over a rocky ridge, something you would imagine mountain goats and mountain sheep going into, bighorns. And they dropped in there and they stayed in there the rest of the season until snow pushed them out. So learn an area, figure out where pressured animals go, and you will have more success than the 89% of hunters that come to Colorado for over-the-counter tags.
That's phenomenal. Well, thank you very much for coming on. A lot of good insight, and we look forward to having you on. Seems like there's a lot of stuff we can probably bring you back for. We're talking about, day packs and full camp packs, and a lot of other archery insight. We're interested to hear what you really shoot and kind of your perception on why you shoot how you do with FPS or terminal impact, and how those kind of weigh out together. So
anything you guys need, feel free to give me a call. And no, I'm really excited and happy to be a part of what you guys are doing. Thanks for giving me a chance to come on and talk with you guys today.
We appreciate it.
If any of your listeners have questions, feel free to get a hold of me. You can either email me at evan@rockslide.com, and that's rock without a C. Or if you're interested in our packs, have any kind of questions on stuff, you can find me at evan@kifaru.net. Is KIFARU. ARU. So it's Evan at Kefaru.net.
Perfect. Thank you.
Awesome.
You're
Well,
welcome.
thank you very much for coming on, Evan.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
It's a pleasure, guys. Good luck with your seasons down there.
Man, that was a really good interview with Evan Williams. It blew my mind. I had no idea that he had so much knowledge. I mean, Scott, you found a really good guy to bring on for our first podcast.
Yeah, I mean, I've known him 8 months, something like that, and I've got some time to spend with him that, you know, I've seen that this is just what we talked about today is just the tip of the iceberg of what he really knows. I mean, he's dove into this industry headfirst and dissects everything he does. I mean, he tests everything multiple times, whether it's broadheads, arrows, bows, gear in general. So he really does have firsthand knowledge of a lot of the things that, you know, I hope we can bring him back on and talk to him more about.
Oh yeah, definitely. Especially when he got into the broadheads. That I was impressed with the amount of knowledge he was getting deep into, and I can't wait to bring him back on.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Now, you know, we want to kind of go back over a few things. This is what we call our show notes to help kind of recap some of the things that our guest said or some of the websites that he talked about, the stuff that'll help you moving forward, kind of doing some more research on whatever the topic the podcast was on. He brought up a couple really good points about, you know, no matter where you're going, and it goes without saying, but, you know, again, we're going to say it, learn the regulations for whatever state you're going to go to. You know, the simple things of, you know, not being able to use any electronics, like Evan stated, you know, in Colorado, that's a big factor, because in most archers' mind, what's wrong with a Luminox? Nothing, but it's a state law out there. So, you know, make sure you don't have Luminox on there. Make sure you don't have glass inside of your scope housing, you know, and make sure that you don't have batteries or you don't have lighting at all on your site. So, you know, always just make sure to double check, go to the DNR or the WDR or whatever division it is for that state and look into those regulations. Make sure that you're an educated hunter when you're going out to the area that you're going to hunt.
Yeah, I think one of the things that he was really adamant about was definitely getting, especially in his area, so if you're around the Colorado area, but most likely Western, is to have some sort of touch screen. And I think he was talking about the OnX GPS system. The purpose was because it gives you the ability to know if you're on private land or if you're on the actual unit that you have access to. So, you know, if you haven't looked at them, he's very adamant about bringing it with you. So you might want to look at getting one.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You know, he listed a few other websites too. One is one that he's actually a writer for, which is rockslide.com. That's rock without a C. I've been digging through there, and there's a lot of really good information on there. The forums are great. They do some very good pieces on again regulations and how to prep for a hunt that you're going on. So check out rockslide.com. Rock without a C.
Yep. And man, I can't wait for the next podcast. And I believe we're going to be discussing the southeast area of public land.
Yeah, you know, we've been talking to a few guys, and we're just trying to narrow down. We'll have one of them on, or maybe multiple of them on this next podcast, and it's going to cover kind of the Alabama, Georgia, South Carolina, that area. The regulations are fairly similar. And similar pressure, hunting pressure on all those areas. So they're very relative to each other. Really looking forward to having really successful public land hunters. You know, we've seen pictures from these guys. We've spent time talking to them, and you know, all of the accolades that they have really does show that they are successful and they have a wealth of knowledge for how to gain access, better access to public land, because anyone can go in the front door, but how do you get to the areas that everyone else isn't hunting? How do you find those areas? And that's what these guys are really good at is getting into high pressured areas and finding where those animals like to get away to, where they hide at during those high pressure times.
No, I can't wait. If you get a chance, go to mybowrush.com, and this episode would be 002, so mybowrush.com/002. You'll be able to check out the show notes and any other information that goes with this podcast and for future ones as well.
We gotta have something. We gotta have a catchphrase at the end or something.
I got one.
What do you got?
So hey guys, you've listened to the episode of 002 with the BowRush podcast. I'm Travis Stowe.
Scott Nelson.
And if you can't find us in the woods, you can't find us. That kind of stuff.
Here, one more serious one. You can kiss your money goodbye, kiss your job goodbye, kiss your girlfriend goodbye. Time for a BowRush.
Oh, jeez. You can always just be simple. Aim small, miss small.
Oh yeah, see, I kind of like that. That's a good one.
We can have it for the third one.
Yeah, we'll get it for the
Always
that's fine.
progression.
I'm Scott Nelson.
I'm Travis Stowe.
We appreciate you guys tuning in.
Take care.